I'm Idiotech, and this is my PC review of No Man's Sky. Now, before we get into the review itself, there's a few things I need to discuss. The first of those being the PC port. This game runs like shit on PC. I covered all of this in a PC performance review, which you can find on my channel. I also want to discuss how difficult it is to review a game like this. Because this game is procedurally generated and everything in this game is constructed using an algorithm, no one is going to have the same experience as anyone else. However, you will run into the same systems, and that is what I'm going to critique in this review. Finally, I want to talk about hype. This game is a victim of its own hype. Personally, I don't think this is a terrible video game, and if you've come to this video expecting me to tear it apart, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but that's not what I'm going to do. I've enjoyed my time in No Man's Sky. I put about 25 hours into the game so far, and I could continue playing it for many more. It has a number of problems, and I'm going to discuss each one of those as we go through this review. However, I do want to commend Hello Games for their achievement here, which is being overshadowed by a huge amount of negative press. What they have managed to achieve in this game is a technological marvel that has never been done before in video games. The ability to explore an entire galaxy and land on any planet in that galaxy is a technological feat I've been waiting for a very long time, and these are the first people in history to have achieved that goal, and I would like to commend them for that. With all of that out of the way, let's get into the review. So what exactly is No Man's Sky? Well, it's a survival game, combined with an exploration game, combined with a space simulator, combined with a choose-your-own-adventure. It's a very difficult game to categorize. The overall goal is to earn money, upgrade your equipment, buy new ships, explore the galaxy. You can choose from one of three paths. You can either follow the Atlas, which is a mysterious force that presents itself to you at the start of the game. You can make your way to the center of the galaxy, or you can choose to explore deep space, hard-to-reach solar systems by upgrading your warp drive in the hopes of discovering rare resources and wildlife. This leads me on to my next question, which is what do you do in No Man's Sky? This is something people were trying to answer for a very long time because the developer was incredibly vague about what it is you actually do in No Man's Sky. Well, I've got a list here, having played the game for 25 hours, of things you actually do, and I'm going to talk about each of those systems one after another. First up is discover planets and solar systems. This is the biggest selling point of the game, obviously, and for me, it's the reason I continue to play. I love the sense of discovery. I love the sense of exploration. I love seeing all the different planets. I love seeing the different creatures, the different plant life. For me, that is endlessly entertaining. However, it has problems, and I want to talk about those problems now. There are no gas giants in the game. There are no ringed planets. There's no pulsars. There's nothing about this game that's remotely scientifically accurate. Almost every single planet in the game has resources. There are no truly barren experiences out there for you to find. None of the planets have rivers. None of the planets have mountain ranges or canyons or geographical features that make them stand out from one another. The terrain generation algorithm they're using here is quite basic. I've done some of this stuff myself before when I was developing video games, and I can tell you what they're doing here is not innovative in terms of terrain generation. There are other games out there that don't have the full breadth that this game has that manage to generate better looking planets. Elite Dangerous's Horizons expansion does a much better job at creating realistic geographical features. This is not a scientifically accurate game. What this is a bunch of rocks with randomly generated stuff on them. And it's satisfying to a degree, but after a while you do start to see the same plants, the same creatures, the same biomes, the same things over and over again. And that's a problem. Because the game sort of led us to believe that it was going to be truly procedurally generated. But what it is, in fact, is a bunch of assets in a database that they reference and stick together. So they'll be like, okay, this planet has red grass, and it has pine trees, and it has frog people with spikes on their head. It's not as truly a procedural experience as you might have been led to believe. They tend to mix and match parts. A lot of the outposts, the monoliths, the shelters, the drop pods are all the same, just placed in different locations. A lot of the plant life is just a different color than it was on a previous planet, and that is sadly a bit of a letdown. That being said, I've still had surprises at the 25-hour mark, they're just fewer and further between. So let's talk about the next system, and that is the ability to scan creatures and plants. Now, if you're a discoverer and you like collecting and you like completionist activities, this may satisfy you. It's very difficult to find all of the creatures and plants on a planet, and it does take a significant amount of time, but you are rewarded very well for doing so. You can name everything you see. I have a major complaint about that. The problem with this game is it's very, very, very big, and the likelihood that anyone else is ever going to run into your discovery is very, very low. So the incentive for naming these things is kind of gone after about the first 5 minutes. I named a couple of systems, a couple of planets, and after that I just started uploading all the discoveries for cache without naming them, because I didn't see an incentive to do so. They need to add some kind of incentive for naming everything in this game, and currently there isn't one, so I just stopped doing it. The next thing on my list is the ability to discover outposts, settlements, monoliths, drop pods, all these types of things. As you fly across the surface of a planet, question marks will show up and tell you that there's something there to discover. You might find an outpost that has a stock of platinum, and if you blow up that stock of platinum, you get the platinum, but then the police force comes along and shoots you. You might find an outpost with an alien creature, and you'll have to solve a small puzzle. You might find a shelter that has a bunch of resources that you need. You might find a drop pod that allows you to upgrade your suit and add a bunch of inventory space, which is a very needed fucking feature, by the way. Let's talk about this now. The game's inventory system is a nightmare. If you want to swap one item in one slot to another item slot, you can't do that. If you want to craft something in this game, and you want to craft maybe 5 of them, you can't tell the game you would like to craft 5, you have to go in and manually create 5. That's a pain in the ass. If you want to refuel your ship, or you want to refuel your shields, or your gun, you have to go into an inventory system to do that. You can't reload your mining tool on the fly, you can't reload your shield mid-combat. You have to go into a menu to do that. A simple button press could have solved that problem. The user interface in this game sucks. You have a couple of slots when you first start the game, and you're constantly micromanaging your inventory and selling things, and micromanaging again, and selling things, and mining and selling things, and it's just not fun. The thing about No Man's Sky that's fun is the exploration, not inventory management. And that's a major letdown at the start of the game, and I can understand why a lot of people who've played this for maybe a couple of hours have been very much put off the experience as a result of that constant inventory management. What are my criticisms of the discoveries? Well, they're fun for a while. The problem is that they repeat. Now, these again are not necessarily procedurally generated. These are models that have been created. They have models for each race in the game. There's 4 races in the game. And they just repeat them over and over and over again in slightly different variations, but you'll end up solving the same puzzle multiple times. You'll end up seeing the same monolith multiple times, finding the same drop pods, the same shelters. After a while, it becomes samey and repetitive, and that's a problem because this game runs out of content in terms of discoveries within the first 4 or 5 hours. And the game's much, much longer than that. It could be potentially infinite if you wanted it to be, but I've seen every outpost in the game. I've seen every shelter in the game. I've found every drop pod. I've upgraded my stuff. And the monoliths are slightly different, as in they allow you to either solve a little puzzle and get a piece of gear, or you get to learn the language. Now, this is a key feature of the game, and I want to talk about that now. You get to learn alien languages. When you first start the game, you don't know anything about what anyone is saying to you, and so it's just gibberish, and you have to infer, based on the situation, what it is they want from you. If you guess correctly during dialogue options, you'll get rewards. If you guess wrong, you might get punished. When you learn the languages in this game, you start to understand what it is they're asking you, and that makes it more easy to solve the puzzles. There are 4 alien races. They're static. There's no voice acting. The dialogue is very limited, and for the most part, you don't even understand what they're saying to you because you can't read what it is they are saying. You're given very rudimentary choose-your-own-adventure style options, or you're asked to solve a puzzle or a problem. They're pretty lifeless. It's nice that they're there. The problem with this game, as I've said before, is that everything in this game, there's so much in it, and at the same time, it's all so shallow because they're trying to do too many things at once, and they're a 15-man team, so it's kind of understandable, but the whole experience is let down by the fact that none of these systems are particularly deep. You're not going to have any relationships with characters in this game. There are no RPG elements. There's no voice acting. You're not going to get attached to certain NPCs and care about their plight or their story. They are essentially signposts that you click on and then they give you something. It's not a particularly engaging system. The next thing you do on planets is you mine resources. Mining resources is a fundamental element of this game, whether it be plutonium to fuel your ship, iridium to build a specific item in your inventory, it doesn't matter. To do everything in this game, you have to mine resources. I personally like grind in video games so long as it results in a significant reward. I played a lot of MMOs in my time and they are full of grind. The reason grind is okay in video games, at least in my opinion, is that when you do the grind, you get rewarded. That's the point of the grind. You do the work for the reward. In Diablo 3, for example, I will grind through a bunch of mobs for the potential of finding a rare or legendary weapon that's going to shoot lightning and melt people in 2 seconds. In this game, the rewards are not so good. Basically, the way it works is this. You mine your resources, you mine them. You sell them. You get some money. Alternatively, you can use them to craft items, but the itemization in this game is boring. You have a multi-tool. I should explain this first. You have a multi-tool. It can do everything. It mines, it shoots grenades, blah, blah. You can have a grenade launcher, you can have a bolt caster, and you can have a mining laser. You can modify the bolt caster slightly to make it more like a shotgun or more like a semi-automatic rifle or whatever, but that's really it. After that, you're just upgrading the effectiveness of each tool. So I could upgrade my mining laser to make it mine faster, or I could reduce the cooldown on it, or I could stop it from overheating, or I could increase the amount of ammo I have in my bolt caster. None of the itemization in the game is particularly fun or engaging, and so the mining doesn't feel particularly rewarding. Minecraft is full of mining. Obviously, it's in the name. But the reward from mining is the ability to build a fucking awesome castle. In this game, the reward is +1 to mining laser speed. That's the problem. The problem isn't necessarily the grind, the problem is the lack of reward for that grind. And that's a major problem with the game, and I completely understand why that's off-putting to some people. Your ability to tolerate grind will vary depending on who you are. Now, you either mine those resources and sell them, you mine those resources and craft them into items that are not particularly exciting, or you trade them. And this is the trade system. Now, this is where the space sim element comes in. I have a number of complaints when it comes to this system. The trading system works like this. You go to a starport, or you go to a trader on a planet, and you interact with a device that allows you to sell your items on the market. You can also talk to NPCs in their ships and buy and sell from them as well. You can fly between system and system and find specific hubs that trade well in certain items, like you can in many other space sims. The problem is there's no way to mark a system and say this system sells gold really well, so I want to go back there and sell my gold there rather than over here. You can't do that. There's no way to label or tag anything in the game, which you would expect given the fact that it's a huge fucking galaxy and you kind of want to know where shit is. So the trading system falls flat as a result of that, because you have to remember which system for every single individual resource sells well. So the trading system is basic. It's practically useless. What you can do is you can go to an NPC, buy something from them that's cheap from them, and then go to the station and sell it for a higher price. It's pretty underwhelming. Another major issue with the trading system is that the game has an overarching goal. The goal is to get to the center of the galaxy. So why am I going to continue to go back and forth selling and trading things when I have a goal to move forward? It just doesn't work. Okay, let's talk about combat, because the game has combat as well. On each planet, there are a bunch of sentinels, robotic forces that are there for a story reason, and they help to protect the planet and maintain its ecosystem. If you mine too much, or you shoot too much of the wildlife, they will get annoyed and they'll come and fight you. You can fight back. The combat system in this game is frankly awful. It is the least intuitive combat system in the world. It is completely unfun. It has no sense of feedback. So when you shoot something, you get a hit marker and that's about it. No animation, no cool sounds. If you shoot them with a mining laser, you get no feedback at all, which a lot of people will do because that's a viable option. It's terrible. You literally point and push a button. It's not hard at all. It's also packed with auto-aim, even on PC. Ugh, it's not good. Now, you can fight the Sentinels, and they're these little floating drones. If you have a grenade launcher, you press one button and they instantly die. Eventually, they will start to call in reinforcements, and those reinforcements come in the form of big walkers and mechs. And that was kind of exciting when I saw that for the first time, but they're also not that difficult to kill either once you've upgraded your gear and equipment. So the combat system on the ground is as basic as a combat system gets. It is literally point, press button, thing dies. There's nothing else to it. You can't avoid damage, can't jump out of the way of a laser or an attack. It's terrible, okay? So the combat system on the ground is bad. The combat system in space is slightly better. The way it works is this. It's a traditional dogfighting system. You can boost your ship. You know, the enemy player has a little thing in front of them saying where you should shoot. You shoot at that, they die. Now, I found the space battles a little more exhilarating, and the reason for that is because you tend to be outnumbered. It tends to be you versus 4 pirates that pulled you out of warp, or it tends to be you versus 24 pirates attacking a cargo ship. That is more exciting because it was more difficult, it's more challenging. Now, the controls got in the way for me on PC, but on controller, I found it relatively intuitive. But, again, it's still a very basic system. You just pew, 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 pew with the A button, right? Or the left mouse button. That's all you do. Pew, 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 and then the thing dies. It's not a very well thought out system. There's no countermeasures, there's no maneuvering, there's very little to it. That's the problem with this game. So many things, yet at the same time, no depth to any of them. You can be a pirate, which is a nice choice, but again, this system isn't remotely fleshed out. They do put bounties on your head. If you attack space stations, the Sentinels will come after you. If you raid cargo ships, which you can do, the Sentinels will come after you. But it's really easy to escape, and then when you move to the next system, there's no consequences. So the pirating system is also not fleshed out either. What you're probably seeing at this point is that there's a lot of content in the game, but that none of it has much depth. And that's the core problem, because the games may be like 30 hours long, and you kind of run out of depth after about 10 to 15 hours. There's pretty much nothing new left to experience after about 10 to 15 hours. So the final 15 hours is just you making warp cells, which you have to mine resources for, so you can warp to the center of the galaxy. And that's just a fundamental design flaw, and it comes from the fact that they've chosen to do so many things, but because they're a small team with limited resources, they haven't been able to flesh out any of those systems. Finally, I want to talk about story. So you have a couple of choices here, but the main one is to follow the Atlas. That's the idea. You follow this mysterious force, you go to these weird structures, and you discover more and more about this universe. I found this really compelling. But again, it's very niche. You have to have some understanding of simulation theory, which I'm not sure if a lot of people do, to be honest. If you do have some knowledge of simulation theory, though, it's a very clever examination of what this game, and the fact that the developers themselves have created a simulation of a universe, what that means. I found it engaging, and it gave me a reason once the game got grindy to continue pushing forward. As you can see, it has a number of issues, and there are many more, but I simply don't have time to talk about them. But I still enjoyed my time with No Man's Sky, and that's the thing that's difficult to reconcile for me. Because there are so many fundamental problems with this game that I just wouldn't accept in any other game. But because of the sheer vastness, the wonderful art direction, by the way, the game doesn't look very good from a graphical point of view, but the art direction is fantastic. The colors, the saturation, the crazy unique stuff you see on planets, even though the creatures are somewhat predictable, occasionally you will be surprised. Discovering a new biome that you've never seen before, that pure exhilaration, the thrill of discovery is what kept me going forward. In light of all these problems, I still was able to enjoy myself. Should you buy this game? The answer is no, and I'll give you my reasoning. I love the game. I had a really good time playing it. I think it has a ton of potential, and that's the key word here, potential. This game is clearly unfinished. If this had come out in early access for $30 and had the potential of being continually developed moving forward, I might recommend it. But at $60 as a finished game with all of its performance problems, the terrible UI, the terrible keyboard and mouse support, and quite frankly, content that loses steam when you're halfway through the game, I find it very difficult to recommend at this price. But I do suggest, if you are interested, that you pick it up down the road once it goes on sale. I think 20 to 30 bucks is a more reasonable price for a game like this. That being said though, as I said in the beginning of the review, this is a technological masterpiece, and while it doesn't execute all of its mechanics particularly well, I've never been able to have this experience in any other game to date, and that for me was enough to make it worth the purchase. However, for the rest of you, I do recommend you wait for a sale. If you found this video useful or interesting in some way and you want to support my channel, you can like, comment, share, and subscribe. If you want to support me financially, you can do so on Patreon. You'll find a link in the description box below for that. As always, thank you for watching. I will see you guys next time.